Hello, everyone. Here we are, regrettably, unfortunately, with another utterly, remarkably egregious and disgusting story. I'm not going to go into it. I would much rather render my analysis after Sheriff Grady informs us of this disgusting story of sexual battery. Let's dive in.
He's 40 years of age. That's right. A 16-year-old victim.
All right, let's
Afternoon, I'm going to
let me rewind so that way we can get the name of this man. I believe his name is Jarvis Young.
give you an update on an investigation that we have been working. And we have been working this on a track coach who was a track coach for Lakeland High School. And this person is no stranger to us. We first interacted with him in 2011, and
Mm,
I'll tell you all about that in just a moment. But I want to show you the track coach. This is Jarvis Young.
mm.
He's 40 years of age. That's right. A 16-year-old victim told his mother that the coach touched me inappropriately on this Saturday. The mother said, "Well, you need to report it just as soon as you get to school," and that's what our victim did. He went to our deputy, who's the school resource deputy at Lakeland High School, and he said, "Hey, I've been sexually battered. I've been touched inappropriately by the track coach." Of course, we immediately called our detectives, and we determined he was not only touched, that he was actually sexually battered, in that the track coach committed oral sex on him.
Wow.
That set of circumstances began on Saturday, August the 26th. He went to school Monday morning, and which would have been the 28th, and our investigation began. During the investigation, surprisingly enough, the track coach fled the state of Florida and was gone for a period of time. However, as we went through the investigation, we learned this. We learned that Jarvis made admissions to us. He, by his statements, admitted that he was HIV positive.
Oh, wow.
Did you hear what I said? I didn't stutter. He tried to and briefly had sex with a child knowing he was HIV positive.
Oh,
So it all occurred when our victim, who was working out over the summer because he's an athlete, was sore and he wanted to become more competitive. So he went to his coach and said, "Can you help me with my strength training and my speed? I need to get stronger and I need to get faster." And Coach Jarvis Young said, "Sure, I can." So he went by the victim's house on the 26th and picked him up and took him to lunch. They went to a
mm,
Mexican restaurant. They talked at the Mexican restaurant for a while, and he said, "Well, I've got some weight equipment. Come with me. We'll pick the weight equipment up. We'll take it to your house." And they did that. And they started putting it together, and there were some parts missing, so they had to make a side trip down to, I believe it was Home Depot or hardware store. And then Jarvis Young, the coach, said, "I need to put up some equipment at the school. How about going to the school with me?" Once
uh-oh.
again, this is on Saturday.
That's the setup.
So the kid goes with Jarvis to the school, and Jarvis had told him at lunch that he was a trained massage therapist. Now, we don't
Mm,
see any evidence that he's certified, but he told the kid that. Now, understand, he told the kid, "I'm a trained massage therapist." He buys him lunch, and he also gives him equipment. We
That's
call
just,
that grooming.
yeah, setup.
So they go to the school and they start putting up whatever sports equipment they were dealing with. When the coach, Jarvis Young, said, "Hey, I'll massage those hamstrings that are causing you problems.
I bet he wanted to.
So Jarvis begins to massage the hamstrings and tells the young man, flip over. And he's continuing to massage and stretch his legs, and then all of a sudden he grabs our victim and briefly sexually batters him before the victim jumps up and says, take me home.
Oh,
He drove him home, and it was reported to us.
Wow.
So if you can't believe that's horrific enough, we arrested, once again, Jarvis Young in 2011 for conspiracy to commit sexual battery on a juvenile when he and another adult took two juveniles to a motel to have sex. Well, we ended up making an arrest on that. However, the charges were dropped because it wasn't reported to us until the statute of limitations, as they were at that time, had expired. So this guy got away with sexual battery.
He thought he got away.
It's also reported to us that he used to be an athlete at the school and was known to hang out prior to being hired by the school to hang out there as well.
Now, wait a minute. Before he even goes even further with this, do you notice he said before he was even hired by the school? My question is, if there was already an arrest on the previous arrest, did the school do a background check before they hired him? I mean, I know he, got out, he was outside of the statute in terms of the limitations of it, or was he smart enough to get it expunged where they couldn't pull it up if the school did an investigation, or a vetting, as they call it, background check, before he was quote unquote hired? All right, let's go.
And he hung out around the sports programs. He's a classic predator, child predator. He's a classic pedophile. In 2017, he supposedly had a young man in the car with him and grabbed him on the leg inappropriately, but just grabbed him by the leg. That turned out to be a battery. But during the course of the investigation, it was reported to the police department. During the course of the investigation, the family became uncooperative, so the police were therefore unable to bring criminal charges.
So he got out of that.
During the course of the investigation, we picked rumors up, and that's why I'm classifying them today clearly as rumors, because we've not run this information to ground and don't have it solid in writing yet.
Innuendo.
But the rumors were around Coach Jarvis Young. Hey, he'll give you stuff, but don't let him touch you. Did you hear that? The kids that knew him from sports said he'll give you stuff, but don't let him touch you.
Well, see, that right there is an indication of exchange. Like, he ain't grooming and giving these kids stuff without an exchange. He's looking for something in return. And that's exactly what he thought he was going to get.
That tells us one thing clearly. He has battered, possibly sexually battered, inappropriately touched other kids for that rumor to spread among them. We strongly believe he has inappropriately touched, battered, or possibly had sex with students in the past based upon the rumors that swirl around him, and they continue to swirl upon his arrest. It's imperative that if your child has been battered, inappropriately touched, whether it's a misdemeanor or not, that you report that to us as soon as possible. It's important to understand that our school officials, Mr. Hyde, our superintendent, who is a remarkable superintendent and does a really great job, is angry, to say the least. He is preparing or has prepared a statement that he's going to release to the media. However, he's doing a deep dive into all of this, saying, why was this guy around the students? and what was the history and what did we know and when did we know it. And he's taking some proactive measures now that has come to his attention.
Well, you know
Those
what? That child's mother might could be able to sue the school district because they hired somebody who has a previous record of this, even though he was outside of the statute of limitations. Unless Jarvis was smart enough to have this off of his record, expungement. Um, but I don't understand why he would get himself in more trouble given the fact that you got out of this via statute of limitations. So that means you should be smart enough not to get in trouble. But now he did this within the statute of limitations, which permits the state to proceed with charges. Now, you think he would be smart enough not to ever get involved, given the fact that he got out of this by virtue of statute of limitations being expired. But now he's dumb enough to get back involved in this same egregious act, but it happens to be within the time frame where the state is permitted. They are given the wherewithal to go ahead and pursue with charges.
that may want to be critical of the superintendent need to understand he's got 13,000 people that work for him. And if somebody hears something or sees something and they don't tell him, they don't say something to the appropriate people, then it's very difficult to react.
You got to cooperate.
But do we believe there were people that knew that he had inappropriate contact with children? You betcha. And we need people that saw something or heard something to say something. This investigation goes on. He got away with this before and he wasn't smart enough to quit
Exactly. I just said that.
because he's addicted to having sex or trying to have sex
Right.
with teenage boys.
Stupid.
He's already HIV positive. We suspected him of being HIV positive in
Oh,
2011, but he's admitted to us that
Oh,
he
wow.
was, and we're taking him at his word. Okay, are there any other questions before I wrap up?
Sure. I know you kind of laid out the situation.
All right, let me give my reaction on this. First of all, how can people, I can't say it enough. I can't say it enough. Um, I mean, just the level of stupidity. Now, you would think, here's this guy, what is he, 40 years old? He should have enough sense not to even trust a 15 or 16-year-old child, let alone to sexually batter one and to think that the child wasn't gonna go and say anything. Come on. And if you would listen, and if you were sexually aroused, why didn't you just try to date somebody that was 21, given that you're 40? Okay, you wanted somebody younger. You wanted to feel like a man again. Not a mannequin, a man again. But what I'm saying is, why didn't he use common sense and say, well, let me find somebody that's 21, somebody that's over the age, somebody that's not underage. Did he really think that that boy was not going to go and tell his parents what had just happened to him? Maybe that's why the officer said that he fled Florida. He was gone for a couple of days. See? My thing is, he wouldn't have had to worry about any of that if he did not touch the boy, if he did not groom the boy. If you wanted to be with somebody younger, why didn't you just go with somebody that was 21? At least you're doing it legally. Yes, you're with somebody young, but legally nobody can say anything. I can't stress enough the usage of common sense. Common sense is not going after an underage child, man. You should know better. You're 40 years old. And I go back to my question. He already had priors. Why wasn't this investigated in terms of the vetting? You don't just hire somebody to be a coach over children. There has to be vetting involved. I wouldn't want nobody around my children if there's no vetting, especially if there was a prior issue that parallels what he's just been accused of and indicted of. And so I believe, given that, with that information, I believe that the parent could be able to go on and sue because of the school's negligence. Because there should have been proper vetting. For example, now he probably, hold on a second, y'all. Somebody acting crazy out here. Okay, listen. So now, when a person gets arrested, well, not even that, but when a person is with outside of the statute of limitations, and by the way, I think the legislator needs to extend that. I think sexual battery, sexual assault, all that shall fall under the category of murder because in a murder case, there is no statute of limitations concerning murder. Meaning that if you killed somebody 40 years ago, and if they got enough evidence to convict, they can indict you or arrest you 40 years later. And I think there should not be any statute of limitations when it comes to sexual assault. So that way, there's potentiality for prosecutors to find out if, in fact, a person really did this according and pursuant to the evidence. All right, let's hear the questions by the people.
And how the charges were dropped, but how concerning is it to you that he did, it appears, slip through the cracks and be able to be a high school coach?
Well, once again, it is disturbing. It is remarkably disturbing. We have a rule of law and we have to respect that. But there was an arrest record on him.
Exactly.
So before he was allowed to be a paid coach, he was not a school teacher. He was just a paid coach. That's
Wow.
all he did. Before he was allowed to do that, what kind of background did they complete at
Exactly.
the school?
I just said that.
That's a lot. That is a lot of questions, and the questions that the superintendent has right now.
Very.
And the superintendent's going to do a deep dive and get answers to all of that. But the reality is, when they hired him as a track coach, he had a 2011 arrest history, even though he was found not guilty, or they had to drop the charges because of the statute of limitations.
Right.
So there was a proclivity for him to do things that were inappropriate.
Mhm.
And for those of us who deal with these issues, we know
So if there was proclivity, that means there was a tendency, given that there was already priors. That's just like when I talked about Darrell Brooks. Look how many arrests that he had to deal with. They were already priors, so that means there's proclivity to doing more crimes. That's why I don't understand why they released him on that he was allowed bail, given the proclivity, given his tendencies of criminal behavior. Come on, man. Go ahead.
that the people who engage or try to engage in this kind of behavior, statistics and research shows us, don't change what they want to do. So someone should have done an appropriate background, and said, hey, dude, we know that you weren't convicted of anything. We know you were arrested for it, but we just need to move on.
Mm.
The way you described it made me think of the doctor arrested that was associated with USA Women's Gymnastics. It's kind of that trust between athlete and doctor, athlete and coach. What do you think this portrayal of trust is?
Well, it's evident to me. He's an athlete. He wants to get better. He goes to his coach and he says, "Hey, coach, I want to get stronger. I want to get faster." His coach takes him to lunch, buys him lunch,
He was
grooms him,
grooming him.
gives him weight equipment,
Hmm.
takes it home, helps him put it together,
He had
and
a
then
whole.
says, "Oh, by the way, I need some help down at the school
That's
preparing
that.
some."
That's that exchange that I was talking about. Oh, by the way, see, he was grooming them, giving them stuff, taking them out to lunch, doing all this stuff. But an exchange had to go down. Come on here. Oh, by the way, I like that. Come on
Some
here.
sports equipment.
Well, no, I mean, I don't like that in terms of what he did, but I like how this officer Grady or Sheriff Grady is explaining this.
So he goes to the school with him on a Saturday where he's alone. He's
Mm,
already groomed him at lunch
already did it.
after our victim says, "Man, I'm sore from all these workouts." Hey, I'm a massage therapist.
See?
I'm angry. The community's angry.
Absolutely.
And every mama and daddy are angry. Make no mistake about it. This guy here is evil that will groom a 16-year-old kid, take advantage of that position of trust in order to sexually batter him. And when he made that abrupt action, the kid jumped up and said, "Take me home."
Mhm. You see that? The kid jumped up and said, "Take me home." Now, does he think that kid was not going to go back and tell his mom what the track coach did to him? That's what I'm saying. Why would he? I mean, let alone, I think it was bad enough for him to even take the boy out to lunch. Why would the track coach be doing that? That right there don't sound right. Why is he hanging around kids when it's not time to be doing that? Why is this happening after the fact? He knew what he was doing. He had a plan to groom, to lure, all of that. Groom him just enough just to see if he can follow through with his plan. And his plan was to get that exchange. What was that exchange? Oh, let me massage you. I'm a massage therapist. Listen, Sheriff Grady just pointed out there is no record of Jarvis being a massage therapist. Ain't no record of that. But guess what? They got record of an arrest. How do we know they have record of an arrest? Because Sheriff Grady is bringing it up. And if he can bring that prior arrest up, then why wasn't the school able to bring that up before hire? Come on, y'all. Why wasn't there proper vetting? I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know how I get wound up, but I don't. I mean, it's just negligence. That sounds like negligence to me. You hiring folk and don't even know who you hiring. You're hiring child molesters and don't even know it. Why? Because of negligence. Women, you're marrying men and don't know who you marrying. Why? Because negligence to do a background check. You know what, y'all ain't. Woo! All right, come on, let's dive back into this.
But there are thousands upon thousands of school teachers in this Polk County school system that work hard every day,
Mm,
and they do what's right,
that's right.
and they make children better, and they help them. This guy, as a coach, has embarrassed the school system, but make no
Absolutely.
mistake about it, he is the rare, rare exception to the rule. Our goal, though, is to appropriately take him before a court and let the jury decide whether or not he needs to spend a very long time in prison,
Well, listen,
and they'll make the
the
final.
only way, the only time that he was an exception to the rule is when the statute of limitation had expired. That's when he's an exception. That's why I said there needs to be an extension on that. It should be in the same category as murder. It should be that should be elongated in terms of the duration. Because I know in Pennsylvania where I live at, if you are charged with sexual battery, what do they call corruption of minors and all that, if that's not reported, if that is not reported, it's only a 5-year statute. So that means if that gets reported outside of that 5-year window, then that means the person that's being alleged of that egregious crime is afforded immunity. Immunity. So, or should I say, they would be considered the exception of the rule, because the rule is only 5 years. All right, let's dive back in here.
Determination. Yes, sir.
Going off of that story, a lot of survivors might be afraid to come forward. Maybe they fear that they won't be believed. You mentioned there might be more students who might be a victim of this. Do you have a message for them if they're just afraid to come forward?
Yeah, thank you very much. My message to the students is we're going to believe you, and we're going to protect you, and we're going to make sure you have any counseling or infrastructure for support that you need. But you can't allow this bad man to hurt anybody else.
Absolutely.
Emotionally, physically, you've got to help us. We need to know everybody that he has attacked
It could be more
or tried to attack. And predators, sexual predators, and pedophiles don't attack with violence. They attack with Mexican lunches.
Right. They do it strategically. That's why he was grooming the boy, trying to get him to like him even more, because that would open the door, for an opportunity, to get that exchange that I'm looking for. See what I'm saying? He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. But I just think it was just something that was just stupidly planned that way. Like you can't, there's no way. I mean, watch this, y'all. I'm to the point now, because I watch these cases and stuff all the time. And I remember yesterday I was in 7-Eleven getting something out of there. I'm to the point where if I see kids or children, I move out of the way. I go nowhere near them. I avoid children that I see in the store, okay? Let alone taking a child out. All right, giving them lunches, giving them stuff for the purpose of trying to fulfill my agenda. I mean, I just think that was dumb. I mean, I don't even go near a child, let alone to do what this person thought he could get away with doing. And the reason why I say thought he could get away with it, because apparently he did get away because of the statute of limitation. I just don't get it. How people don't think before they do stuff, or they don't implement common sense before, pursuing an act. You know what I'm saying? you better think of, see, it's like people think one-sided. They think, oh, the good you can get out of it, but they never go over, but what if not? What if it doesn't go the direction that I planned it to go? They never think about the consequences or the ramifications that could play a part as a result. You could be playing Russian roulette and don't even know it because you didn't review the obstacles that could potentially play a part in this. All right.
And free exercise equipment. And being your friend. And wanting to make you more competitive in the world. This guy took advantage of a child. We know he took advantage of other children, but because of our law, he escaped that one.
Right, statute of limitations.
But we know there are other victims out there. We know there's one victim of a battery that before the police could finish the investigation, the family said, we're over this. He just grabbed him by the leg. Enough of that. That's not acceptable.
That's battery.
We want to, as I say with my vernacular, we want to put him under the jail for a very long time. And we believe, anecdotally, from experience in the past, there are other people out there that can help us ensure that he never can be around children again, that he's locked up in the prison system where he needs to be.
Well, exactly. Anecdotally, that would be the ancillary relative to the request of the state to make sure or to ensure that this man is never free again. Because if other people come forward, then that strengthens, the believability. Because as you know, there was already a previous charge. Okay. There was some that they tried to go through it, but there was no participation when the boy didn't follow through with the charges, so they couldn't get him then. And so basically what I'm saying is there is a history, and that makes the defendant impotent, and that otherwise strengthens the case of the state. But I think they definitely have a strong case. Now, this obviously will go into the hands of the jurors. Jurors are the ones that decide on the facts relative to the evidence presented by the state. And I hope that the jury, in the words of Darrell Brooks, do what's right. Do what's right. I hope they I hope they do ensure what is right. Ensure this man to be put in prison for his actions, given the evidence um, relative to his criminal history of this. All right, listen, I want y'all to comment on this. I mean, this is just horrific, you know, but I'm glad that it didn't go further than sexual battery. I think he fondled the young man, but it didn't um, ferment into well, I don't know. I don't know. They did say that the man had HIV, and so I mean, just taking advantage of a child like that is just absolutely reprehensible and not accepted. And I know the one thing let me tell you, you don't want to be locked up as a convicted felon of sexual battery on a child. You don't want GOP to find that information out. You don't want that. You don't want that. And so, if this man is convicted, which I believe that will ensue, or should I say, if and when he is convicted, he's gonna have a hard time in the prison system in the state of Florida. He's in Florida. Let me just get a few more comments. I don't know if the press is going to ask him some more. Let me see here.
How
Okay.
long is that statute of limitations, and how did that play a role in this particular case?
The
Should be
statute of
long.
limitations at that time, I believe, were 4 years for that
Oh, wow.
particular charge. It varies. Since then, the legislature has changed the statute of limitations, and I believe, depending on the sexual event, that there is no statute of limitations any longer. I haven't had the chance to research that before this press conference, but we've always had no statute of limitation for capital sexual battery on a child under 12.
Mm.
There was a statute of limitations at this time in 2011, but since then the legislature has changed that to where I believe there's no statute of limitations on sexual battery or sexual battery of a child now. I'll have to research that. But I know one thing for sure. August 26th of this year
That's within the
is
statute.
clearly within
Right.
the law.
Exactly. They got him.
And
That's
he's
what
going to get him a whole.
that's why I said he got off. All right. by default of the expiration of the statute, and now he does something stupid within the parameters of the statute. You dumb, you stupid. He is stupid.
Whole bunch of the courtroom.
Oh, he gonna be sitting in the courtroom in a prison cell.
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, is there any further charge pending
The-
in this case, or maybe some steps you've already gotten?
Well, the investigation's still underway. We are looking for other victims at this time. Okay? Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. God bless
All
you.
right, listen, y'all. I would like your feedback on this. This kind of stuff unfortunately happens on a daily. All around the world, this is happening. We hear this all the time, but you think a person that's hearing this all the time, and the majority of the time, the people that are committing these crimes are going to jail for the rest of their life. You'd think, given that, information, a lot more people would use common sense before engaging in something like that. Grooming a child, and I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get the philosophy behind that, given, the obstacle that could stand in your way. And what can stand in your way is the law. What can stand in your way is being in a prison cell for the next 30 years. See, we have to factor all that in. You have to factor all that in before you follow through with a criminal act. All right, leave your comments. Thank you for listening.